All right. Billy?
Hi, I'm Bill, the photo brother.
And I'm Dan, the video brother, and this is Stacktalk with the Railbrothers, and today we have a special episode. We're going to talk about old trains.
Just old trains.
Just
not
old trains.
New trains.
Not little
We
trains.
will talk about little trains.
Not-
We will talk about
Oh,
small
we will
trains.
talk about little
and
trains.
big trains. But not
Big
new
trains, but not new trains. Just old trains. Maybe ghost trains, too. Memories of trains. And probably the most consequential train to at least our childhood, fabled in the Brown family, was the Blue Comet. Billy,
Yeah,
what are your
so
thoughts on the Blue Comet? Let's give a little background on what the Blue Comet is.
So, Blue Comet was a express train that went between Jersey City and Atlantic City in the 1930s. Started in like 1929. Very bad time to start an express train with the impending depression. The famous thing about it was that it was painted blue and cream colored. And it was it was actually a favorite train of, I believe, Joshua Lionel Cohen. Who then
Of Lionel Train's fame.
Exactly, of Lionel Train's fame, who then made the famous Blue Comet tin plate train that, truthfully, is probably actually more famous than the actual train itself, being in a Sopranos episode and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably you bring a good point, where the train is more famous for being a toy train or a model train than for actually it being a useful train in and of itself, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I can't think of very many other trains that has happened for.
I feel like, actually, truthfully, a lot of early Lionel that way. You know, like the
Hudson, the J1E Hudson, maybe.
No, because that's famous in its own right. I'm talking about the little. I forget what are they called? The little electric engines that went into
like New York
Grand
Central electric thing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what were they called?
I don't know what it's called.
You're the New York Central guy. You're supposed to know. They just saved one. They just
Like
saved
an
it. What is
S1
it?
or I don't.
I'm looking this up. I want to know. Electric.
I didn't
logo.
prepare this.
Yeah, this is all off the cuff, people. S motor.
S. Oh, I was close. I said
yeah.
S. Okay.
So
right.
the New York Central S motor, because that's what all those little original so many of those little Lionel electric engines, or the tin plate engines, were based off of. The S.
But the lore of the Blue Comet has penetrated deep into, at least in my opinion, toy train culture, also New Jersey culture, and the culture of our family. To me, it is a foundational train story for the Railbrothers and the Brown family. And so I have been shocked to learn that Billy does not want it in every single scale. So he doesn't want an HO scale. And even though we have it in every single other scale, he's like, oh, no, I don't want an HO. And that's what brought this whole thing up. I was flabbergasted at his distaste for the train
not
and
distaste. It's first of all,
but that's just why we wanted to talk about it, because I think it's going to be an interesting conversation.
It is. So my modeling aspect of it, even though this is a Reading T1 back here, I bought this before I started modeling the current one we were doing. I'm trying to model the Bordentown branch of the Pennsylvania Railroad, roughly in 1929 to the 1930s. Most of my Pennsylvania Railroad engines are actually at the Railroad Club right now for open houses, so I don't have that behind me, but I've got the Reading T1. So my thought is that I'm trying to keep really on prototype, and the Blue Comet pretty much never would have ran here. But
we don't necessarily know that.
The competing train did. The Nellie Bly, which was the Pennsylvania Railroad's much longer running competitor to the Blue Comet. It started in the 1800s, or very late 1800s. I think it was either 1899 or 1901 that it started running, and it ran all the way to 1962. Unlike the Blue Comet, which only lasted basically in the 1930s.
So by all accounts, a more successful train is the Nellie Bly. However, it just failed to capture the imagination of the public, even though more people took it. right?
I guess because I think most of the fame of the Blue Comet really came after.
And this little picture on the right is wrong. It never had these little red stripes on, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, I don't think so either. But who knows?
Right?
So that would have gone on this line. You have made the argument that it's possible that the Blue Comet would have detoured at some point on this track, but I find it. It may have, but it wasn't it wouldn't have been a very common thing. So, as I said, I've been less, Danny, it being this was to give you and frame it still more for you guys, this was a train that our father actually told us bedtime stories about, where we would find engines, because this, by the way, the engine, all the engines, the 3 engines that it had were scrapped. And so but it does have a decent amount of actually.
Yeah, you could actually cobble together an entire consist of it. The only thing you'd be missing would be the dining car, and maybe the combine car.
I'm not
sure.
But
it didn't always run with the combine car. But
yeah.
I think all 3 of the observation cars are still around. But anyway, But I guess he would always tell this story where we'd find the Blue Comet in the middle of the Pine Barrens. And the Pine Barrens also had a significant lore to us because that's where our uncle was doing his tracker stuff. You know, my dad spent a bunch of time there. We would go off-roading there all the time and play around weird plastic aircraft carriers and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we'd also try to we'd go find the route of the Blue Comet through the Pine Barrens.
Yeah, that was always a fun thing. It was did the Blue Comet go on this?
But it was, we lived on the Jersey Shore at the time, so it was a local train at that for us, if, we lived about 80 years before we did. So it was one that captured our imagination. Also, big, very important thing to me, my favorite color is blue. And I believe it was my 6th or 7th birthday. My dad bought us, and mainly me, because Danny was very little, a G-Gauge Aristocraft Blue Comet. And this was a big deal for me because my dad was really dressing it up, and really, who are we fooling? My dad bought it for himself, basically. Yeah, you see it right there. Beautiful looking engine, not exactly prototypical, but it for me, it actually hit the right thing, where it had the feed water heater above the firebox, or no, the smoke box.
Yeah,
that is the number one
critical
thing for me if I'm going to find a model of this train. And that's one of the problems that Danny has always had. He will point out to me that a Blue Comet at a train show and be like, Bill, Bill, whatever you feel like calling me, you model HO. I model N scale. You should buy this HO Blue Comet. Now, Danny, he has the N scale Blue Comet made by Broadway Limited, which looks great. But Danny is then pointing at this IHC, possibly Rivarossi Blue Comet, which does not have the feed water heater above it and is basically just a generic Pacific. And I don't want that. If I'm going to get it, I want to get the Broadway Limited version, because that one turned out pretty well.
Let's see. I'm looking up the Rivarossi version here.
You mostly usually picked out the Rivarossi might actually be right, but I don't think I've actually ever seen the Rivarossi. Now, Rivarossi one looks like it's right.
It looks like it's got it, Billy.
You've usually picked out the IHC one, admittedly. The Rivarossi cars, truthfully, I'm sure.
Well, it's really just the cars, because eventually you'll get the right engine. Yes, okay, you're right. The IHC one does not have the feed water above it.
Which I guess probably is an easy thing to fix, but I'm not that. I'm not at that point level of modeling yet, as you can see by the plywood.
The cool thing about because this model is more famous this train's more famous for being a model than it is for being an actual train. It's interesting because it kind of parallels the development of the hobby, where the first one, the Blue Comet in tinplate, is this. Of course, I don't get a picture of it. Blue Blue Comet.
Not template.
Standard gauge.
You spelled none of that.
Oh my
right.
gosh, I'm terrible at spelling. Is this like wonderful caricature of the train? It's like in maybe the right colors in this wonderful template version, and it commands like thousands of dollars, and famously featured in a Sopranos episode where some guy gets whacked in a toy store.
Spoilers.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I mean, the show came out like 20 years ago at this point,
Spoilers.
right? Like, all right.
Episode is called The Blue Comet, though.
So then there was that one, and then there was the MPC era Blue Comet. I think it's this one right here, which again it's improving. It's getting there. It's got the feed water heater above the smoke box, but it's actually the complete wrong wheel arrangement, right? So it's got. Is
that a Hudson?
Yeah, it's a Hudson. Yeah, so it's like they're getting there, but just not quite there. And then Aristocraft came around with the. And still, none of these are actually accurate, like that. So the Aristocraft one kind of looks right, but the real one had a kind of a Wooten style firebox, which is a
truthfully,
wider.
it was weird because Danny pointed that out to me like a month ago, and like
know.
somehow that never like popped into my head.
And then it also has this like weird like asymmetrical toolbox thing on the pilot. That's weird that they very very rarely pick up on in the models.
Oh so, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so there's actually some like weird. Yeah, they see that right? Yeah, so it's got like asymmetrical toolboxes or something on the pilot. That's what I think it is. I don't really know.
So,
so no one's really made. So then eventually, MTH Premiere made like a freaking accurate version of it.
That
is super impressive.
Because O-Gauge has everything apparently.
Yeah, O-Gauge. And then they made a Rail King version of it, which is
what we had.
And because it was in such high demand by us, my dad bought us each our own set.
Because we're brothers and we
fought over them. So really, we had 2/3 of the complete Blue Comet consist, right? All because they had 2 trains. I think it had 3 consists, right?
Well, that's valid. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so we actually almost had the whole thing. So the other cool thing about the Blue Comet, so the colors. Inspired by the Jersey Shore, right? I think like the blue is supposed to be I'm gonna get this wrong. It's either the color of the sky or the water. I'm not actually sure. And the cream is supposed to be the sand or something like that. But the other cool thing is all the cars are named after famous comets. So they're all named cars instead of So that was kind of a neat thing for the train. And just cool marketing. It looks nice. Like the marketing was fantastic. The inside of all the train cars were all in like blue upholstery. So everything was blue, very charming. Probably one of the best looking trains ever made, in my opinion. And there's no streamlining involved. It was just a nice paint scheme that was well coordinated throughout the whole thing. And then
I think it got screwed over in 2 ways. It premiered like right before the Great Depression hit, and then in the 30s. Its competitor train then merged with the railroad that it was sharing trackage rights with to get into Atlantic City. So to form the Pennsylvania Reading Seashore lines, because the Jersey Central didn't actually go all the way to Atlantic City. I believe it had to get onto the Reading down there. To get into Atlantic City at which junction again?
Winslow Junction?
Winslow Junction, yeah. Which is, I believe, where one of the famous crashes happened, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, and that was also kind of spelled the death knell of the train. Because I guess the other things going on in the background, one of the other cool things about at least if you were like a 1920s man going to the movies or going to see the big premiere down in Atlantic City, 21 Skidoo onto the Blue Comet, leaving at 10 o'clock at Communipaw Terminal. Skip to Skidoo, is that it did not charge an extra fare for the train. So if you wanted a parlor car in the Nellie Bly, Pennsylvania Railroad would make you add an extra fare on top of the original fare. Whereas for this one was an all-coach train, but you got a dining car, you got an observation car, you basically had lounge cars and everything. So you got a premium experience for the price of coach, and arguably a nicer looking train too. because it had its own dedicated equipment for the most part. Whereas for the Nellie Bly, it's probably just a pool of equipment that could be whatever, like P70 that the Pennsylvania Railroad happened to have lying around at Sunnyside at that point. So there's definitely some benefits to the Blue Comet. However, I think the Jersey Central Railroad, which if we didn't make it clear, it's the Jersey Central ran the Blue Comet. And
versus the Pennsylvania Railroad ran the Nellie Bly.
Did the Nellie Bly. So they paralleled each other. Both went from New York to Atlantic City in various fashions. The Blue Comet theoretically had a more direct route. And so theoretically could have been faster.
I did some research on this the other day, and I think if I remember correctly, the Nellie Bly was actually faster somehow. And my guess is that because... And the weird thing is, the Nellie Bly also had engine changes involved.
Because it was electric and then became...
Yeah, but I'm guessing they made up the time
would they
the
change,
corridor.
Would they change when they electrified the corridor? Would they change in Trenton? Or would they
changed in Trenton.
They changed in Trenton. Oh. Mm-hmm. So it would have zipped down the corridor really quick.
Yeah, exactly. And then it would pick up
That's pretty cool.
most likely a K4 or a E6 to take it the rest of the way. Or later on, like some kind of diesel.
Yeah, so it started off, I think the service was the Blue Comet was pretty popular. And then as it went on, it was also a last-ditch effort for the Jersey Central to even just do any passenger service like south of Lakewood or anything like that. So it was the only train that they had that was running all the way to Atlantic City at this point. I think previously they had unnamed trains or something that would run down there. And eventually it became a little bit less profitable, and they weren't maintaining the train as well, so you'd get non-Blue Comet trains in the consist sometimes. Sometimes the Pacifics would be all booked up, so you'd get like a Camelback in there, and famously the Camelback that is preserved in Baltimore at the Baltimore Highway Railroad Museum pulled the Blue Comet at one point. And so the consist would sometimes get like a little bit watered down where it'd start to look like a regular train. In that case, I'm like, well, am I really getting like a premium experience here? Am I just getting like the regular freaking trains? And then they're like, well, I might as well just take the Pennsylvania Railroad and they're going to have a guaranteed.
Which, by the way, they didn't just have the Nellie Bly at that point. They had 3 different named trains that did the same route.
Yeah, which I think just shows how powerful and successful the Pennsylvania Railroad was. But, as I said, no one besides you, me, and like a handful of nerds along the Delaware River know what the hell the Nellie Bly is.
There's an ice cream store named after it.
Whereas I think a bunch of people know what the Blue Comet is, just from a cultural standpoint.
Valid.
But maybe we're warped.
But I would also go with the Nellie Bly is named after a more famous person, an actual historical figure.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, okay.
The reporter Nellie Bly.
Which that's kind of cool and progressive of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So they both famously got into crashes. And this was kind of the death knell for the Blue Comet was its crash, which I think was by Winslow Junction. And my understanding is the problem with it was that it wrecked their dining car, and they only had one dining car, I think. And so then that basically meant the train was screwed. So they didn't have a dining car. They couldn't really do anything for it.
Woodland.
Woodland.
Yeah, I think it had 2 crashes, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
There was one... I think there was one at Winslow Junction. And I think there was one somewhere in the Pine Barrens where, like, basically the track was just crud and derailed. Yeah,
so then interestingly, they like put the wrecked dining car in Communipaw, and it was just this like coach that sat there as some sort of storage or something.
Or maybe it was just one crash.
Yeah. So anyway, that became the end of the Blue Comet, and then the Nellie Bly famously had a crash, right, Billy?
It had several.
Several crashes. Okay. Was one like really deadly or something?
They were all deadly.
Okay, so the Blue Comet one, I think it killed the chef in the kitchen, and that was it. It injured a few people.
Well, the Nellie Bly, like it was like 2 years, only a couple years after it premiered, it had a big crash in the town I live in, and it was like right along. It was like between Trenton and Bordentown, and it head-on collision with another train, both basically going at full speed.
Oh my gosh!
Along a canal.
PTC would have saved it.
Oh, they didn't even have freaking signals at the time. That was one of the things that, like, ultimately the engineer who, like, was reading his little train order, apparently the conductor put his thumb over, like, the part where it said there was another train coming.
Whoops.
And that was not of the Nellie Bly. That was the local train. But the guy got off. He didn't actually get charged with murder or manslaughter or whatever. Mainly because they were like the Pennsylvania everybody was like the Pennsylvania Railroad should have put signals on this line at the very least, maybe double tracked it.
Which is kind of crazy because they were pretty signal happy everywhere else,
Yeah, apparently they didn't want to do it on this branch. So
yeah, okay.
They did put signals. They didn't actually double track that area.
So getting back to the controversy is that I think this is a piece of family history because we were told kids about the train like in bedtime stories about it, right? And so we have it in G gauge, right? We've got it in G gauge. We have it in N, quite nicely in N. We have it in O.
Mm-hmm.
I potentially might get it in S. So Lionel made a S scale.
Nerd.
Yes, so that's out there, and it's a nice looking set too. So I might pick that up at some point.
It is a nice looking set.
Also in Hanukkah colors. So if anyone wants, celebrates Hanukkah, it could be like a Hanukkah train. And then that leaves, like, of the major scales, that just leaves HO. And Billy's a HO guy here. And he doesn't want to buy an HO. We could have, like, a little holiday setup with the Blue Comet in every single freaking scale. And it would be awesome.
So, here's my thing. First of all, I have now come around slightly in that, mainly because I joined a train club recently, and I have reasons to run trains that aren't just Pennsylvania Railroad trains. I might be more open to it, especially if it's the Broadway limited version. Also, someone at the club had it, and it looks amazing. So, there's that. But my thought is that I like to model trains that are more the everyday train. Like the normal train. And I don't know when this came back to me. It was like sometime, I think, when it was like we were doing O-gauge stuff. And when I was like, no, I don't really stop caring about having the streamlined Hudson, the 611, the stuff. And the funny thing is, a lot of these engines were the typical engines of the time, but I liked kind of the ones that were more of the workhorsey, everyday engine that wasn't necessarily celebrated. I don't know why. I just kind of I feel like I like those one more. Where it's like, oh, this is the freight engine that took the stuff to the mill every day. This is the local train that's getting all the laborers are going between the factory and home on. That's typically where I was like, I kind of like that kind of modeling more.
Yeah, so you don't want like a flashy blue train coming. That's what it comes down to.
Not really.
You think aesthetically is different from this sort of gritty realism that you're portraying as the actual reality.
And by the way, this gritty realism is currently plywood. But
yeah, well, I guess my counterpoint to that is that if you were in the Pine Barrens along the Jersey Central, this was the only passenger train that went by.
That's
so
valid.
It was the everyday passenger train. It would just happen to be the Blue Comet, and for the first couple of years, a beautiful blue color. So, but I guess it's an interesting counterpoint where you're going for realism, right? And not even just realism, but like realism quotation marks, right? Where
it's weird.
You're like portraying this in an aesthetic way where you don't want the boxcar as a colorful car, even though that might have been a common thing at the time, because it stands out like a sore thumb on your layout. Something
exactly.
Like
I want give me this.
So you're portraying as like a realist painter,
dirty. Yeah. Black, brown car is what I want.
And like portraying this image as the past, as like a dirtier, grimier, maybe more holistically aesthetic place where it was all like my camera's here.
Everything was dirty. There was nothing clean.
Yeah, nothing is clean.
No one took a bath.
No one took a bath. Yeah, basically.
There was steam dirt. There was coal everywhere.
Which I think definitely was like somewhat true, but probably not that true.
Probably not as true. And as I said, truthfully, I've kind of rethought this position a bit, but specifically on what I'm modeling, I don't need any flashy trains going on.
Other counterpoint, the Blue Comet also famously was featured in several exhibition trains. So here it is. It got pulled on the Tuckerton Railroad. So it was a fan
give me
trip,
those little 440s. I love those things.
And the freaking 440s pulled Blue Comet down to like Tuckerton or something. One past Barnegat. I obviously could not go on the island, but I think at that point the bridge had been the bridge might have still been there, but they were probably too heavy to get. I don't know about that, but anyway, like it's basically this like little branch line run by like these decrepit 440s.
I love them.
Pulling
That's what
the
I love. That would be
train.
like truthfully, if that was on a model railroad, it would explode my brain. But you could be like, nah, this fucking happened, and
this happened.
I also love that.
Do you see it?
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I love it.
There's a bunch of nerds like you and I in the 1930s went down like, oh my god, this is so freaking weird. And yeah, it's really freaking weird that happened. And so I think there's a chance that if there was a problem on the Central Jersey, that it would have diverted onto the Pennsylvania.
The thing is, I feel like it wouldn't have
There's
fully
no evidence
diverted.
of that, but there's no evidence that it didn't happen.
At the point, put it this way. So go back up there, scroll up. I saw there was a map. Scrolly. Yeah, click on it. Yeah, give me the map. So I don't think
it
there
could
was
have gone on to the Pemberton and whatever, and gone to Camden and then gone around.
Which is not my area of the track.
Or it could have gone here, just to Perth Amboy.
It would have
gone.
It would have had
Railroad.
to bypass the entirety of its route.
All right, you might be right, but I think there's a chance.
Like,
There's
I feel
a
like
chance.
they'd cancel the train and just tell you to get on the other one before that. But I don't know. I can be corrected.
I'm just saying, it went down this weird little thing to Tucker did.
Yeah, but that was, like, as you said, it was the special. So,
yeah.
I don't think the special would have been going to Trenton area of New Jersey when that's majority Pennsylvania Railroad and not really rare mileage at that time.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, anyway, so I think it's a... so what turned your mind around about the Blue Comet? Was it just seeing the Broadway Limited made a nice one in HO and you're like, all right, that's pretty cool?
That was truthfully always my thing, is that because you always would point out the shitty IHC one. Not shitty, but it's probably behind the engine. But, like, it is not
no
what I
for
want.
IHC here.
Truthfully, the IHC ones that we had when we were kids, they didn't look great at all, but they ran well. So I'm like, there's a place for those.
Yeah.
And they're usually not that expensive. So, like, hey, if you're looking for an engine that's not that expensive, you're like, hey, don't necessarily need the most accurate thing in the world, or you can feel like messing with it more, they might be a fun one to do. Because I forget who actually made. That's a tangent, but like I'd really like to, if I was going to get one, the Broadway Limited one. And truthfully, a guy at the club had it like last week, and thing looked amazing. And truthfully, I would probably... And the other part of it is that now that I'm part of an HO Railroad Club, I can bring my fun trains there. Like, I wouldn't have to be like, all right, why am I buying this thing? I'm like, the funny thing is, one of the reasons I have a very specific prototype is so I don't buy stuff like that. And now I joined a club, and now I'm like, well, I can buy that. Or maybe I'll buy a, Baldwin... even though it's not in my... like a Baldwin diesel. SMS Baldwin diesel, even though that's not what I'm here for. This is the problem. Like, it's like, oh, now I can buy all this stuff and I have a reason to, or kind of can make up a reason to. It's dangerous. Wow. Dangerous for my wallet.
Dang. Yeah, I think so. It's a cool looking train. I've got an N scale. The Broadway Limited one at N scale runs really nicely, and I was fortunate enough. Well, the P70 coaches. They painted up like the Blue Comet, but they're not actually Blue Comet coaches. But they're close enough. But fortunately, after that, Microtrains came out with a whole N scale set of the Blue Comet that had baggage car, coach cars, and a dining and.
Do you have that
car? Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Oh.
Mia got it for me for my something birthday. I don't know. Few years ago. So I've got a bunch of Blue Comet cars, and they look really good. The only problem with the Microtrains ones is they don't have any lighting in them. So and there's no provision for lighting in them. So if I did it, I'd have to like put wires in and put wipers on the.
I don't think that's that hard. I'll see. I say that now, but I need to do that.
I don't know. And the N-scale's pretty finicky, so if I screwed it up, it'd be like derailing all the time.
That's valid. Like I'm thinking about doing that with some of the cabooses I have.
But for some reason, I put in like
there's a guy at the club who's really good at that stuff. If you need that, yeah,
in N-scale?
I don't know about N-scale, but in HO he's amazing. Like he took those the River Rossi. So he has the Broadway Limited engine, but he has the River Rossi cars.
Yeah.
And he lit them all, and he has passengers in all of them. It looks great.
Well, to be clear, I've done that for other trains.
Yeah, I know, but he put the lights in and everything. Like the River Rossi ones didn't exactly come pre-lit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I think there's something special about the Blue Comet.
Like he also did another one recently where he put a glowing potbelly stove inside a like an Overton style.
Yeah,
pitch.
ideally if there was a kit, and some people have made them, but like Rapido used to make an N-scale kit that was just battery powered, so you could, and it had like a motion detector, so if it was stopped for a while, the light would go off, and then once it went going, the light would turn back on, and then like a little magnet thing turned on and off. But all those sold, and I think people didn't like the batteries, and they reverted back to the track power. But the nice thing with the battery one is that if you're using like these microtrains ones, you can just like glue it into the top of the car, and you're basically good to go.
You can make that.
But then you have to manage. Yeah, you definitely could, but I'd rather get my layout actually functioning.
Yeah, it's probably good
first before doing that.
Yeah.
But if I did either way, it looks nice either way.
But like to give you an idea, this is the interesting thing about it. So my philosophy is like I'm trying to go with a really specific prototype. I'm trying to make it so it is, fairly as accurate as I can probably go with it, being currently plywood. But that's my goal, is to be accurate versus you have a layout which is not supposed to have a prototype at all. And generally you can run anything you want on it. And like something like having a GG1 next to a Daylight.
To be clear, the Daylight does not fit. That's a separate episode. It goes to the Salesman Billy episode. And actually Salesman Mia, frankly.
Hey,
but with my scheme, the Blue Comet actually does fit. Let me explain you why. So I have a terminal on the top, right? And the idea is it's supposed to kind of look like either Reading Terminal or like any like big train shed terminal. Now, the Blue Comet never went into a big train shed terminal. It was always like a Bush-type train shed at Communipaw. But theoretically, like, it was of the same era, so it could have gone to some other thing. And for example, the Reading pretty famously paraded around the Crusader all around his pictures. Or all around his track, so much so that it's actually more typical to find the pictures of the Crusader not on the New York branch than it is like it's in Pottsville or something. It's like it didn't run to Pottsville all the time, but for some reason all the pictures are like in Pottsville or Pottstown. I forget which one. I think it's Pottstown. Anyway, that's all I'll say. That I think it would look like if you had the Blue Comet and a GG1 next to each other with P70 coaches. I don't think it's going to look that off. But if you had the Blue Comet and the Daylight, that's not right, in my opinion.
I don't know. Like if you like your
because my railroad's basically like a proto freelance Northeast railroad.
Yeah,
so
but you also
it has ran a Northeast.
But you also have like Amtrak trains running on it.
Whoa! I wouldn't rather run at the same time.
Oh, okay. I always thought the concept of yours was that like you can run all these steam trains and stuff because there was just an eccentric billionaire that bought them all or something like that.
Well,
and ran them with modern equipment.
At least at the moment, I have enough equipment that I can run all Pennsylvania Railroad. Like I can have two eras. I could be like, oh, here's the Pennsylvania,
okay.
I'll do the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then I'll do like modern era. And for the modern era,
when you got the Daylight, you would describe the train, the layout to me as what I described then, where it was like, hey, you're gonna have all these steam engines running with electric engines for some reason. Modern electric engines.
Well, I think I could rationalize the Daylight because that engine survived into preservation, and so you could theoretically.
Oh no, that was my rationale to you when you bought it.
Like
so
you
that's
could,
why...
yeah. I mean, I think that was the worst purchase I've made ever in my train experiences.
I think it was great because you were at the time you were just like you wanted like every streamliner, like that was the kind of idea.
Yeah. I guess the layout could have been a way to. I mean, it still is in a way. It's like a passenger train fantasy layout.
Yeah, like you wanted to showcase all the different streamlines. That's what I thought.
But I think your comment before is
because
something
you also
I've been
have
about.
the New York Central. It's not. I don't think you have the Dreyfus, but you have one of the Hudsons.
Yeah, I have a Hudson and I have the 20th Century Limited. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a notion that I would basically get every single one of the Kato streamliners. That's pretty cool. But at the moment, it doesn't fit very well into the scheme, and I've had like technical issues with it.
Yeah, there was a reason you got it. It's not as like you like why did you?
And I was making the shirt
this?
for it and everything, so I was like into it for a second, and but still, I just wasn't. It just never really fit.
It evolves, like it happens. I have a Reading T1 here that does not fit my thing at all, but it's cool.
You know, it'd be cool, a Blue Comet. But I think the Blue Comet aesthetic is pretty good because it's basically.
I've come around on it mainly because I have
I would like to
think
that whoever the painter for the Polar Express kind of had like the Blue Comet dialed in a little bit for that.
Explain.
Well, it's just a stripe. I guess
pretty sure I've heard that it's basically supposed to be based off of
the crescent.
No, I thought they like at some point they specifically said they. The one that they based it off of.
I'm talking about the coaches. I'm not talking about the engine.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the coaches. Yeah, it's just like the two-tone thing with the coaches, which I mean, it's pretty typical. But and then on top of that, I think like the aesthetic, like there's that great page in the Polar Express where the train's going behind all like the pine trees with the wolves in front, and I just like imagine like that being the same thing, but it's the Blue Comet in the middle of the night
in the Pine
Barrens. With like some deer or something instead of the wolves. And so I just thought that was like whenever our dad would tell stories about finding the abandoned Blue Comet, like I always thought of something like that. Oh, we're like in the Pine Barrens and we're in the sand and there's like
which by the way, eventually we had a entire roundhouse of Blue Comets. If you remember correctly.
That's pretty
because
cool.
He had our father had continuity between all of these stories he told us through.
His memory was better back then.
Yeah, exactly. And like, as someone who has a 3-year-old now, I don't know how the hell he did that.
Maybe did you retroactively apply the continuity?
No, I don't know. Like he was like, oh, and then we added it to our roundhouse, and like, I don't know. Like he somehow remembered all that stuff. In some way, shape, or form. Or I think also Dad is really good at telling a story. Like he knows how to like formulate it well and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I am less good at. So, like, he was just always good at spinning a story. So, I think that helped.
Yeah, he is a good storyteller.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so hopefully this will end up with Billy spending some big money on a...
This is all... By the way, ultimately, this entire thing is just Danny wanting revenge on me for convincing him to buy the Daylight set in N-Scale. This is why I had to bring it up, because I'm like, that is the reason.
I will just say that the Blue Comet makes more sense on your layout than the Daylight does on mine. At least geographically and time period, it fits in with your layout.
Originally, at the time you bought it, your concept was you wanted to have highlighting different streamliners. The Daylight is one of those, and an excellent example of that. So at the time, you might have changed it since then.
Maybe I had more money at the time or something. I was just like, yeah, screw it. I'm just gonna like get this. I
think it might have been. I don't know. You were like. But as I said, at the time, you wanted to highlight different streamliners, and have it so they were like all coming in at like it would be an East Coast version of like St. Louis or Chicago, where like they all are kind of meeting at some spot, but also somehow being modern at the same time.
Yeah, it wasn't totally out of the realm.
Yeah,
and,
so
and
like,
there's also some family lore with that as well, where my sister liked the Daylight.
It was the one train she ever liked, and she said she will actually come onto a podcast with us to talk about that.
So I'll just leave it there, and then I ended up anyway. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, but Danny ended up getting it for Christmas instead of her. And,
I think this was like one of the few times that usually I go to a train show and I have like a very specific list of things that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna if I see this, like I think that's a cool thing to get, or I see that, and I do my research and I make sure I'm getting the right thing and blah blah blah. And this was like a spur of the moment. My wife was there, Billy was there. I think I had a friend there too, And Billy was like, "You should get this. You should get the Daylight." And then he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful train. This beautiful model." I'm like, "All right." And then like basically, I just gave in the peer pressure and burned a hole in my wallet. And now the locomotive doesn't work that well. The articulated cars are falling off the track all the time. Even though I like opened all of them up and then put all the people in them and installed all the lighting, blah blah blah.
So it sounds like it's less my problem and more that the train just isn't that great.
I think it is a good train. I think I got unlucky with it. And I think my layout is not good because it's pretty technically challenging.
Yeah, lots of turny and uppy downy. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Which I
not
don't
very
think
straight liney. Which
yes.
most trains are actually straight liney.
Oh, I mean the Daylight actually did a good amount of the uppy downy.
It did, but like when you look at it, like
the radiuses are like thousands of feet. yeah. So anyway, Blue Comet.
Like I've taken that route. It's a beautiful freaking route. Like
I would encourage. I think the Blue Comet. I will go out on a limb and I say it was the most iconic model train ever. The only things I think that come close to it would be an F7, like a Santa Fe F7.
Yeah, that's pretty iconic. Like
maybe the most iconic steam train. But I'm getting like kind of.
I feel like you're narrowing it down.
But I'll still even say that the Blue Comet is more iconic than the F7. Because I think didn't MTH for their logo. Isn't it a Blue Comet?
It is, yeah, or at least it was for a time.
At least it was until like probably lawsuits or whatever with Lionel.
Well, like they did also a weird thing where they were for a bit, and I don't know if they still do.
Yeah,
they
were
building
the
tin plate ones for Lionel, and I think that's where kind of like MTH started or something like that. I'm not.
They're fixing. Sure. They would fix tin plate standard gauge stuff.
But yeah, that was like one of the ones. So like, there's an argument to be made, but I feel like some of the. And I feel like it definitely represents the era of tin plate probably best. That and like the little like S1 thing, because of the little electric engines. They probably represent the tin plate era best. But like, it depends. Like like I think a lot of times the people that care about that kind of stuff are probably not. They're passing away and stuff like that. Like if you look at somebody our generation, what's their like? Is it going to be like a Bachmann 060? Is it going to be a...
No. I'm saying that the cool thing about the Blue Comet, in my opinion, is that it has been produced in such a variety of ways and has been basically allowed to detach and reattach from the actual prototype in very different ways.
That's true. Yeah.
That I don't think is... I can't think of another particular example that has done quite the same thing. Because let's talk about the Hudson. Lionel came out with it. It was a scale Hudson. So the Hudson has always been about scale, reality, looking really prototypical. F7 always has been scale, right? Like there are semi-scale F7s, but not really. They're mostly to scale, right? Yeah, and they look just like an F7. Like it's like okay, that looks very much. Whereas for like the idea of the Blue Comet is very different depending on what the era that it's being modeled in. So that's why I think it is the most important model train ever. I'm saying like the collective Blue Comet. If that makes
important
sense.
Is a lot, I'd say. Iconic.
Do you see what I'm saying here? Is that it is something that transcends.
It's interesting, yeah.
Transcends prototype and era.
And it probably transcends just like our hobby itself. Like it represents a good, like that, and probably the Addams Family trains probably represent some of the in the general zeitgeist of model trains. What it is, that and like just having an HO train around your basement, Yeah.
Because like they made, like Bachmann made things like bizarre narrow gauge, G gauge, Blue Comet, right?
Yeah. That's it. Like this one,
I think,
like it's just like basically that the Tweetsy 460 with different paint schemes that they've done. The big hauler. Yeah,
but just because the Blue Comet is such an important model is that they feel obligated to make a Blue Comet version of it, even though it's not prototypical at all. Yeah.
But like,
they have license to do that because it never has been prototypical.
Every time they make a Blue Comet, they also make a Southern Crescent in the same thing. So like
that is
Bachmann
true.
had a Southern Crescent in the same thing.
But not everyone.
The only one you got is the tin plate.
The
I
tin
don't know
plate,
if there's
which
the one.
I think that does take it over the edge.
It does,
like
and
you
like
said,
the tin plate is the iconic one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say that you have an argument there. Yeah, you have an argument there.
Yeah, you could really do it. Yeah, so. And I think also the NPC era one is interesting. I think they did make an NPC era Crescent as well, though. So it is a shame they never preserved. I would be really happy to see if there was like a Blue Comet Pacific that was sitting in the Smithsonian instead of the Crescent, but that's because I'm a New Jersey boy.
Yeah.
So
obviously, I think after they finish the T1, they should rebuild a Blue Comet.
A Blue Comet, that'd be amazing. Yeah. As I said, there is a surprisingly large amount of rolling stock from the Blue Comet hanging out.
That'd be cool.
So you could basically assemble an entire train, and it would be very, very convincing. As I said, every single observation car is still surviving.
You arguably have an engine with that Camelback down in B&O.
Well, hell, if you just get 4 1/4 out and just like...
It's painted blue.
I mean, it's painted blue. Just pull it. It would look pretty damn close. And I think as a kid,
they did have a Blue Comet special with 148.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that. Yeah,
back in the 70s, 80s.
But so there's an eccentric millionaire that's based in New Jersey that wants to do a similar thing to the Reading and Northern. They could just do that.
I think we just need to make a lot of money is the key.
Exactly. We'll just make a lot of money, and that'll be that.
But I'll build a real one, but I don't want to get an HO1, Danny. No.
All right. And on that note,
no. But seriously,
you're gonna buy an HO1, right? It's
you just like threatened me. What the hell were you holding? Like, was that like a?
This is a clip. This is
you like had like Billy, a thing. I was like, what?
Billy knows exactly what this.
Yeah,
this is the clip that goes on your hot
phone.
shoe.
Yeah, for your phone.
You put your phone on inside.
But I'll probably at some point get one down the line. As I said, if I find a good deal on the BLI one, that's probably what I'll do. Or maybe if they re-release it.
We should start a GoFundMe for Billy. The Billy Blue Comet GoFundMe.
Like account. It's truthfully not even in the like I need money to do it. It's more of it's fucking hard to find.
If you have one, give one to Billy.
Give it to me. Like seriously, like I've looked at it on eBay and it doesn't pop up very often.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it at many trade shows.
That's why I jumped on the N-Scale one when I did.
Yeah.
I think you could still find the N-Scale Pacific hanging around, but you can find the BLI coaches, but I think the Microtrains ones you can't really find that much.
Yeah. So like as I said, I think it's just one of those ones that I just don't see that often. So like I said, if like when we went to the train show the other week, if we saw one, depending on the price, like it was in that like depending on the price, I might have gotten it kind of thing. Yeah. So, at this point, you've kind of worn me down. You worn me down in that like you're
gonna get it.
But I don't want the IHC one, Danny.
Okay.
I want the Broadway Limited one. Or if somebody else wants to bring it out, I'm happy to do that too. I am not as long.
There are brass ones out there, super expensive, and probably temperamental.
The fun part is that sometimes the brass ones recently, I don't know, like I've been hearing, and I don't know if I've actually seen this, but that brass has actually started to come down recently because of the quality of the like plastic ones that have come out,
and all the old,
especially like when like it's a plastic one that had like that like they made a plastic one later.
Yeah,
like not as many people want the brass one. Like
it doesn't work as well. The painting is weird. It's
at least that's what I've heard. I don't know if that's 100% true. So, but yeah, like you have to like a brass one, you have to paint it and stuff like that. And a lot of people, like, especially like our age now, we're less into like we kind of like they say that everybody wants stuff instantly. We don't want to like paint up a boxcar. We don't want to paint a whole. I personally would be very scared to paint a brass engine. With my current level of
you don't want to mess it up.
Like I am scared to paint a.
Honestly, I'm scared to touch a brass
engine. Tyco plastic engine right now. Yeah. Like I wouldn't do good at it. Like I'd have to do that first and do a bunch more to be able to paint one of those. I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. As I said, if I come, you've got me at I I think I'll get one now, but I just need to find one, and it has to be that specific.
And
one,
I have a
so.
dream. I have a dream.
It's
that one day, when we do a train show, we will have the Blue Comet in every scale. And they'll be going around each other.
We need it
and
Z.
The children will appreciate it.
Did anyone make it in Z?
Yes, I think Markland made it in Z.
Really?
I don't know that, but I think they may have.
Buy it.
Yeah.
This is how I do it. He spends an entire podcast trying to get me to buy one engine. I'll just be like, Danny, buy it, and then he will.
Yeah. Oh my God, they did. Yeah, they made it.
I'll bring that up. I want to see that little
did.
thing. Does it look better than the IHC one?
No. But you won't be able to see it anyway, so it's
yeah, exactly. It's just a little. They just probably painted
Look,
like
right. This is Z. That's Z, right?
I don't know. It hasn't shown up yet. There we go. Oh wow.
Doesn't look bad.
Yeah.
Adorable.
I expected it to look more German.
No, I think it would just be like a.
Like they just painted a German engine blue. Like.
So there is a chance that maybe did. I suspect this is N scale. There's mislabeled here. Description. Obviously doesn't say. But there's a chance that they made it in Z because. Microtrains, they make stuff in N and Z. So there's a chance that they did it in Z. Yeah. So then we could have basically. Then we just would need T scale, right? And that would complete it.
Yeah.
Now I've got to buy an expensive
S scale one.
S scale one.
No, that's mainly because.
I mean, think it's $850 for you get an engine, you get 4 coaches. That's not that bad, right?
Not really, but you're the N scale guy, so or
this
S
is S
scale.
scale. This is S. Yeah. I don't know. Is that?
It's probably about right. As long as it works well, and looks good.
I think it does. It does look good. It looks. Have you seen pictures of it?
Yeah, you've shown it to me.
Yeah. It looks good. And it's going to be the same coaches as it's the same model as the heavyweights one that I have. Same mold.
So it has so it has the same cars as the Polar Express.
Yeah, except the Polar Express has a modified observation with the round end.
Like it's not just a Berkshire painted blue, right? Like
no. It's a really good looking.
Oh no! I know it is, but but like if you look at Lionel's HO line right now, if you're looking for a steam engine, everything is just that Berkshire painted in different colors.
Yeah, and I've heard that it's not a very good Berkshire as well.
Yeah,
they cheaped out on the bearings and whatnot. The S scale Berkshire's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
Cool.
It's been more reliable.
Well,
so anyway, Billy's gonna get it in HO. I'm gonna get it in S. We'll see who costs more, and we'll meet again in a year and see if we have every single scale.
There we go of the Blue Comet. Then we need to have a little photo or something, and we also need that G gauge one we have is in rough shape because we played with that when we were kids a lot.
Those coaches are so beautiful. They have sprung doors on them.
Yeah. But I needed to find there was someone in Canada I did research and someone in Canada had some of the parts we needed to fix it because some of the side rods are busted on it.
Yeah, I think the way to do it is later on they made a version that had all metal wheels and everything, right, and metal gears.
Yeah, but it didn't have the
striping on it.
No, it didn't have the feed water heater.
No, but I'm saying take the mechanism from that and just
I guess so. I can play with that. I guess that could be a possibility. I don't know. I think they might not have the same color wheels because the Blue Comets are kind of a silvery. Blue and silver. These would just be black.
Yeah. Okay.
Which might be okay, but I think that's it for the podcast tonight. Make sure to go follow and like us everywhere. You can
look at all the Instagrams and all the things.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok if it's still around.
We got big plans. I think we're gonna have another episode talking about some of our plans for the upcoming year. So stay tuned. We're gonna keep on posting content.
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
Exactly. Right. Cool. When's Dan? Dan, when are you gonna have some videos up?
It's hibernation season. We're not.
Yeah, you say that. You were sitting on how many videos?
I think 2.
Aha. Yeah. See. And how long have you been sitting on one of those videos?
A while.
Yeah.
I've actually have a few more. That. Anyway, that's another.
Cool.
Episode.
All right. Have a good night, good day, whatever, everyone. Like and follow, all that stuff.
Bye.
Bye.
Take this train from this rusty place. Take the first train today. When you're going on those rusty rails and you hear that lonesome whistle wail.